What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Whiskey, Web, and Whatnot with your hosts, Robbie the Wagner and Charles William Carpenter III.
Whom today is a Black & Decker portable air conditioner. That's what you're going to know me as today.
Yeah, so there might be some background noise. Hopefully we get it taken out in post-processing. But we have a guest today, Michael from Prime Barrel. What's going on, Michael?
Hey, guys. Everything's good. Thanks for having me. Excited to join you guys.
Yeah, do you want to tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself and the Prime Barrel?
I always have like an elevator pitch, and then also have like a long story version. So I'll probably settle somewhere in the middle. But long story short, my parents immigrated to this country about 25 years ago, 30 years ago. I came here when I was like 16, turned 16 here. Spent a lot of my childhood and adolescent life on an East Coast. So I'm a Philly guy. So everything sports, Philly sports, unfortunately, is me.
Hey, Eagles are okay.
Eagles are fine. Yeah. I witnessed one championship. Hopefully not the last. Spent a lot of time on the East Coast, and then life took me to Los Angeles, which is where I am now. My wife is from here, so you meet a girl and kind of move for her.
There you go.
So spent 25 years in corporate world in the middle of the pandemic. Had enough of it. I was just telling the guys off camera. There are like 3 stages in corporate life that you kind of encounter. One is you want to be at the meeting at the table. Second is you want to run the meeting. Third one, you don't want to be at the meeting. And so in the middle of 2020, I've reached that third level. Thankfully, I should say, I had a foresight in investing in a business on the side, and that business kind of grew and allowed me to kind of drop my corporate life and dedicate myself to something that I enjoy, which is whiskey and spirits. And by necessity and learning of different things outside of just having retail shops, which we do have in New York, we've kind of launched this Prime Barrel thing, which always meant to serve whiskey nerds and people that kind of share the same passion. And I always say whiskey is really a tool. It's not a drink. It's not a spirit. It's a tool for building relationships. And if you think about if you drink whiskey, especially if you drink whiskey, if you don't drink it, you probably not going to relate to this. But if you drink whiskey, you probably can draw a parallel to what I'm about to say, which is some of the most important things in your life happened in or around whiskey. Like, for example, when my kids were born, I lit up a cigar and I had a drink in my hand right after the hospital, obviously.
Right, yeah.
I've had my uncle put me on to whiskey when I was 18, and it was like a snowy day in New York, and it was his 50th birthday, and we were sitting talking about life. And so I remember that conversation. Long story short, it's something that opens people up and allows you to make new friends. And through the club, through the Prime Barrel, I've met certain people that I would never have met otherwise. We do things together. In a height of crypto and NFT boom, there was this thing that people referred to as IRL, which stood for in real life, and which means like you don't really live in the ether. You don't live in your Zoom calls. Like there's still physical life outside of these walls that is going on. And so as a group, we travel together. We go to these distilleries. We drink whiskey. We select whiskey. We talk about life. I've made friends. There are certain people in Los Angeles where I am that I would have never met them otherwise. And now they're my friends, right? And we share whiskey, and we our families know each other. So that's the part that always drew me and attracted me to this business. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to support my family through it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I didn't realize you were West Coast as well, so that's good to know.
Drinking early.
Yes, you can empathize. I'm in LA, try to be a couple of times a year, so I'll hit you up. But all of that aside, it also seems a little weird for me to be the one to introduce the whiskey, given our guest, but I'll give it a swing. Today we're having the Rare Character 6-year straight rye whiskey. It is finished in Amburana casks. It was a Prime Barrel pick number 76. It's 117.5 proof. It's a little hot. And I guess to be specific, it is 6 years, 10 months, so almost 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you guys get into the drink, and I actually need to go get my tram because I left it downstairs. Sorry.
No worries.
But I'll tell you a little story about the brand itself. So the Rare Character is another brand, and COVID and pandemic, it seems to be a theme in today's call. That brand started during the COVID as well. And the person that's behind this brand also is from Los Angeles. He actually runs a pretty successful whiskey bar, one of the more successful and more complete whiskey bars, I would venture to say, in America. You can pretty much find anything that you would want in that bar, including Stitzelweller distillate. And for people that don't know what Stitzelweller is, it's what gave Pappy Van Winkle the name Pappy Van Winkle. What you're drinking now is far cry from what it used to be. It's now a defunct distillery that doesn't produce anymore. There's still barrels being aged there, but they don't produce anymore. And the guy had a lot of insight into whiskey. He has an amazing palate himself, but he also had connections in the business. And everything about this business is about connections.
Yep.
And so he's not distilling producer, NDP is what we call him, which means he's a white labeling, right? So he buys whiskeys and he blends them. Sometimes he blends them. Sometimes he sells them as a single barrels, which means he doesn't blend and he sells barrels as is. But he built the brand during 2020 and he's very successful at that. He has a knack for aesthetic, which looking at the bottle, you could probably appreciate it. The top part of the label is something that stands out on his bottles in that's his way of customizing it. Yes. So that part where you see the art, that art is submitted by each person that selects a barrel from him. So you'll see that being different on every bottle. Everything else about the bottle will be the same.
Right.
But that part is very kind of customized, and it's a far cry from what others do, which is like a sticker or a hang tag, or my personal pet peeve is when people put insane, what we call them tater stickers on the back with some clever, or you would think they're clever names.
Yeah.
And just kind of like destroy the bottle. Aesthetic.
Tater stickers. I'm going to steal that. Oh, yes.
Tater stickers. That's what we
You
call
can tell
them.
the folks at home what taters are later on. We'll put a pin in that a little bit. I know you need to get a glass in your bottle,
Yes,
though.
let me go grab a glass and bottle. I'll be right back. Sorry.
I hope you brought your machete to get it open.
I don't need a machete. I also have a little sampler. That's
There you go. Yes,
That's
you
the
got ahead
benefit
of
of
all
being
that.
in a business. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. I like the aesthetic of the wax top. You know, it's like a nice touch. But at least for mine, there was not an exposed tab or anything, so I needed to bust out the Leatherman to get in there.
You have two camps, essentially, that either hate it or love the wax tabs. I don't hate it. I don't necessarily love it. Although on this bottle, it's done tastefully, so
Yeah.
I'm okay with this. The brand actually has a video on their website showing people how to open these things.
Right.
Because they've heard the feedback loud and clear. Yeah, essentially you need like a very sharp knife.
Yes.
And try to open it without slicing your own hand, right? So that's a challenge.
exactly. That's the other side of it. Not necessarily user error in that sense. It, like I said, it's a nice touch, but if you've got to go to a website to get the info to open it up, it's probably going to fail for a lot of people. I don't know.
They actually use the wax colors strategically. So if you look at the label, under the barrel number, and I'm not sure if you can see it. So under the barrel number, there are 3 letters, which this one says A and B. That stands for Amburana.
Yep.
And this is a departure from their normal, I want to say, quote unquote, traditional single barrels, which are just like normal bourbon or rye barrels. The fans of the brands know these bottles by these little abbreviations. Mm-hmm. Why? Because every abbreviation speaks to where the barrel came from, who the alleged distillate source was. Because again, this is NDP and they're governed by NDAs. They never disclose that information.
Yep.
But in the whiskey circles, if you know the mash bill, you can identify where the whiskey came from within certain level of certainty, right?
Yep.
So fans are looking for specific things. And so the brand connects each line of their barrels and they match it with the waxed up color. So they've used several of them. I think there's the red tops, there's green tops, there's white tops, obviously. And then there's a new one now that I just selected with them about a month ago. The distillate is going to be from Willet, and it's a 10-year distillate.
Oh, wow.
So it's a 10-year Willet without having a Willet bottle.
Yeah.
And people will pay a fraction of the price for what they would have paid for the actual Willet bottle, right?
Yeah.
So these things will come with, I believe, yellow wax tops. So interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, that's a good to know. I remember the days when I could go into the Willet gift shop and pay $35 for some other stuff. Family
Well, I mean,
estate
Willet
stuff.
is a huge distillery, right? I mean, they produce a bunch of
KBD
brands.
makes tons. Yeah.
KBD makes tons. They made their names in sourcing. Funny enough, I'm not going to go too deep into the history of Willet, but suffice it to say, they were operating, then they closed, then they started operating again, and in the years that they were closed, they didn't really have any of their own distillates, so they had to come out and they source stuff, and they sourced stuff mostly from Stitzel Weller. They were, fortunate enough to be able to do that, which put them on a map. Those single barrel selections that they've done were just amazing. Like anything over 15 years, 16 years, is just unbelievably good, but you're going to pay for those bottles. Those are few and far between, and even if you can find one, it'll be a pretty pricey. It will have a pretty pricey price tag. So that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about Amburana for a second, because this is something that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And you wait, and also remember, you were going to teach us the taste. You said we suck at it, and we need to do better. And I accept that. That's fine. I've had a lot of whiskey, but I don't, sit in nerdy circles and talk about the nuances of things. I make up half the words. You know how this goes. But
I'll never be the one that tell you how to drink your whiskey.
Right.
I'll be the first one to tell you, drink your whiskey the way you want to drink it.
There you go.
The best thing is, as long as it tastes good, that's all that matters. As long as you like it, that's all that matters. Don't let anybody sway your opinion otherwise. With that being said, there are a few things that people should know about how to approach, at least, drinking cask strength whiskey. Because there is a huge difference between drinking stuff that people buy off the shelf, and that goes back to the blending component, and then the single cask strength selection. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Blending essentially means, in layman terms, means getting a batch of different barrels, let's just say 10 of them, right? And then essentially mixing them up. Like think about your chemistry class. That's exactly what they do. They're trying to mix and match. There's obviously an intent. Every barrel that goes into a blend serves a purpose. One might be oak forward. The other one might be fruit forward. The third one might be, some other note, right? And the blender is trying to create a certain profile that they already had in their minds. And each brand, depending on the brand, has different philosophy when it comes to it. Like take Maker's Mark. The Maker's Mark that you're going to buy anywhere in the United States, or for that matter, anywhere in the world, will taste exactly the same because they don't deviate from their formula, they don't deviate from their blend, and that's on purpose. They want brand consistency. If you like Maker's Mark, you're going to like it regardless where you pick it up.
Yep.
Others like that fluctuations, not just fluctuations.
Variation?
Yeah, variations, right. You can call it that. If we're talking about not blends, but just single barrels specifically, it's a single barrel. It's one of one. And every barrel is going to taste a little bit different from the next, right? Just by definition. And so people that are whiskey nerds or people that enjoy their whiskey a certain way, they prefer that variations. They want to be able to say, hey, I have something in my collection, or I have something in my bar, my cabinet that no one else has, or very few people have, and I happen to love it. I happen to love what I'm having, especially if you contributed to that barrel selection, right? If you were fortunate enough to do that. Not just that, cask strength versus 90 proof. So, by the way, that's the formula, right? So we're all math geeks here, I would assume. ABV, alcohol by volume versus proof. It is a very easy conversion formula. It's just ABV times 2 equals proof, right?
Yep.
Proof, and really what it talks about is how strong your whiskey is going to taste like. Normal whiskey expressions, most whiskey expressions, and I know you guys know that, but perhaps your audience doesn't, it's probably going to be around 40 to 50 ABV range. More skewed towards 40 than 50. So what that means is nothing comes out of the barrel at that strength. Nothing. So the only way to get it to that strength is to add water to it. There is another business reason to do that, because when you add water to any volume of liquid, you
get
multiply
more.
that liquid, you get
Yeah.
more, right? And so you sell more. Now the price is going to be cheaper too, right? Anything cast strength is going to be always more expensive because there is less of it, right? It's just basic supply and demand.
Yeah.
And then depending on who you talk to, most people will say barrel strength stuff, unadulterated, uncut, unfiltered. Essentially, when water isn't added to it and you drink it right from the barrel, or not messed with after it was dumped from the barrel, it will always going to have bold flavor to it. It's always going to be more flavorful. But your palate needs to be trained to pick up those flavors, because if it's not trained, all you're going to taste is alcohol and burn, and you're going to be put off whiskey forever. And so, like, when my friends come over that don't necessarily drink whiskey, I would never pour them something that is, high proof or has a high alcohol content. It's just not something they would enjoy. So that brings us to this specific thing, and Amburana specifically. So within bourbon circles, within whiskey circles, there are constant fads that take place. It started out with finished whiskeys and finished bourbons, which means your original barrel of whiskey after aging is dumped into a secondary barrel that had something else in it before. It could be anything. It could be rum, it could be wine, it could be tequila, it could be scotch, you name it, any spirit other than whiskey, or even if it was whiskey, like we call it double oaked. A lot of times people take one barrel of whiskey, dump it in another barrel of whiskey, and it gets more exposure to the wood, which which creates a certain profile. So long story short, that was a fad, and I think it's still a fad, but I think people are coming off of it a little bit.
It's
now,
very saturated. So like, Pinot Noir and rum and like all of those, feels like everybody's done versions of that. So
yeah, and it's not new, to be honest. Like when you talk about finishing, like scotches have been doing it forever, but they've been doing it with very specific barrels, mostly with port barrels, right? So sherry and port, because those barrels naturally lend themselves to for whiskey to be finished in them. Why? Because whiskey lots of times is going to be spicy, right? That woody, that profile. When you put it in something that held a sweeter liquid before, it smooths out those rough edges and it creates a very nicely balanced expression. And so that's what scotches are known for. But bourbon geeks then took it to a completely different stratosphere, and I've seen expressions like insane expressions like Mexican vanilla Coke, which is like three different barrels combined into one. Like that's just insane.
No,
I always say, look, especially when it comes to wine finishes, that's just my own personal opinion. It's very hard to execute a red wine finish. Why? Because you can easily oversaturate it and it becomes tannic. It becomes too dry. If I wanted to drink wine, I would drink wine. If I want to drink whiskey, I want to drink whiskey. Now, are they great wine finished expressions? Yes. They're few and far between for the simple fact that it's very hard to execute. Yeah. And I think Amburana, like when we talk about certain things are done because the combination of bourbon or whiskey versus, like I said, sherry cask or something of that nature. It's just it's a marriage made in heaven. It's a natural combination versus something that feels forced. And I'm not saying Amburana feels forced. Amburana has an interesting history in terms of being used. First of all, do you guys know what Amburana is?
I don't.
Nope.
Okay. Amburana is a Brazilian oak.
Okay.
It's an oak tree.
Yeah.
And people have messed with different oaks types to build barrels forever. Sure. Obviously, to be called bourbon, it has to be made from American new virgin oak. But there are different oak families, right, in the world. There's Mongolian oak, there's French oak, there's now Brazilian oak, and then there's all different types of wood that people use to produce barrels. So Amburana comes from Brazil. It is famous for giving a whiskey a very unique and robust profile. Okay. And also, the effect of the finishing a lot of times depends on how many times that secondary or finishing cask was actually used. So, for example, let's take Amburana barrel, right? So Amburana barrel is made from Brazilian oak. It gets transported from Brazil to America, which in the beginning stages of it was super expensive. These things were expensive, which is why anything that had Amburana name on a label was expensive. People would dump their whiskeys into it. The first time they've done it, the effect on that secondary cask is the strongest.
Yeah.
Think of it as a tea bag, right? So like when you sip your tea, the very first time you do it is the strongest.
Oh, a
right?
literal tea bag, not what I do to Robbie sometimes when we get together. A different kind of tea bag. Okay.
my
Gotcha. Yeah. No.
Nice. Is this PG-13 version of it? No.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can. We're an adult show, so we can say fucking shit and tea bags.
Awesome.
And
No,
stuff,
that's
so.
not that type of tea bagging. Although after drinking this, you might be.
You might be up for it. Yeah. Luckily, Robbie's far away for now. So. Sorry. So yes, think of a tea bag and the steeping.
Yeah, the more you do it, the less of an effect that secondary cask is going to be. And in certain cases, it's actually for the best. It really depends on what you're looking for in a whiskey, right? So
Right.
we've done several Amburana finishes over the last, I want to say, 3-year span, because it was popular. Let's be honest, it was very popular in the beginning. Right now, it's totally and completely jumped the shark to the point where when people see Amburana, they don't want it.
Interesting.
Because in the beginning stages of it, nobody knew what the hell it was.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't know what the taste profile was, and the taste profile is very unique. I'm not sure if you guys tasted it. We're going to get to it in a second, but it's going to be very unique.
I was impatient.
I'm very impatient, and so I had some.
So, like, what's the predominant note? What's the predominant smell or taste that you're picking up?
I really get the same on the smell and the taste, like a lot of cinnamon and licorice.
Bingo. The cinnamon is, yeah, good.
Yeah, I got that on the taste. On the smell, I got a bit of like dried tobacco.
That too.
Yeah. Okay. So hey, dear listener, I'm not full of shit. Just so you know.
No, and you're right. So those three specific notes, cinnamon, predominantly cinnamon. There's tobacco leaf for sure. There's a little bit of licorice. There's a bit of leather. People call it leather. Although,
yeah. I mean, what does that mean? Like, I think
It's more of
leather
a
is another
smell.
way to say woodiness too.
Yeah,
I think
correct.
when you
Yeah.
get some of that woodiness, it it has a leathery kind of. Yeah.
Correct.
I have tasted a leather belt before, just out of curiosity, just for fun.
So with any finished product, what you want to taste first and foremost is the whiskey itself. If you feel like you're drinking that secondary cask, like for example, if you feel like you're drinking wine and not necessarily bourbon, or if you're drinking, brandy, whatever the second finishing is, that's not a whiskey that's done right in terms of secondary finishing. You want to appreciate whiskey for whiskey. You want to pick up those traditional whiskey notes. So if it's bourbon, you still want to get some of that caramel, some of that vanilla, some of that sweetness, inherent sweetness, right, that corn brings, but enhanced by some of the characteristics of that secondary cask. And so when this came out, it was really meant for people that had been tired of like your normal whiskeys and wanted to have something else and wanted to impress their whiskey drinking friends with something that they might not necessarily have or even tried before.
Yeah.
So the distillery that actually made it popular and famous is a Starlight Distillery out of Indiana.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, those great folks. We work with them closely. They actually, it's funny enough, they started out as winemakers, and they have a lot of land in Indiana, just over the river from Louisville, and they grow everything on premises, so it's truly ground to glass operation, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of talk about being grain to glass, but that doesn't really mean anything. Because grain can be sourced from anywhere. But when it's ground to glass, that's different. That means they actually produce their own grains and everything. They control every step of that operation.
Yeah.
So they've made finishing whiskeys in general popular because these guys have every finish under the sun. Like you name it, they have it. Blackcurrant, peach, brandy, grapes, orange wine. Like it's just insane the amount of different finishes that they use with their whiskeys, and they made it very popular, and especially this one. And when they put this one out, those things were selling out like hotcakes. People couldn't get enough. And then, like every other industry, you see your competitors, and you're seeing a success with the product that they have. You try to mimic it, right?
Yep.
And people started to clone Amburana finishes, and not all Amburana are created equal for many different reasons. Number one, when people put Amburana on a label, that doesn't really mean that it was secondary finished in the cask in a barrel that was made out of Amburana wood.
Right.
All that means is that it had some presence of Amburana wood in it.
Well, that could be staves, dropping staves in or whatever. Gotcha.
Staves, chips as well.
Right.
All kinds of crazy things. So not all Amburana is created equal. Then not everybody knows where that balance is, right? Like, so it still comes down to your ability to blend, and it still comes down to your ability to say, okay, this is enough. This is done. Let's pull it out. Let's bottle it.
Right.
And so lots of people overdone it. And when you overdo it, this stuff is undrinkable. Like, it's like drinking cinnamon right out of a glass, and you don't really feel like you're drinking whiskey. So a lot of people got put off by that. And so, like, fast forward to today, every time we introduce as a retailer an Amburana selection, not even selection, like expression, it doesn't have to be our own barrel selection, it just can be anything. People are not going for it anymore. I think they're completely over Amburana. But this one, and one other thing I'll say, Amburana is interesting in that, again, like the notes that we just picked up were cinnamon and were leather and were oaky, like all the spiciness, right, of sorts. You would think when you pair it with bourbon, it's a natural pairing because bourbon is sweeter. And so when you mix sweet and oak, it's a nice balance, a nice combination. Well, we're not drinking bourbon. This is a rye expression.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the ryes famous for?
Spiciness.
Spicy. Yeah.
So like spicy on spicy, you would think, oh shit, that could be too much. You tell me if this is too much. Do you guys like this? Do you guys not like this? Like, what's your opinion on this?
Well, this is a perfect segue. I was going to say we do a rating. It's a somewhat arbitrary rating system, 0 to 8 tentacles. Tentacles comes from
the octopus, your logo.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
And then we have to throw a 0 in there because we're software people, so we're index based, 0 on. So it's technically 9, but whatever. We don't get caught up in semantics. So from 0 to 8 tentacles, 0 is terrible, 8 is amazing, clear the shelves, 4 is like not bad, but we'll see where it goes from there. So I'm curious what Robbie thinks. He was just shaking his head, so this could be interesting.
No, it's good. It's I don't know that we've had like a rye finished in something else like this.
Angel's Envy
maybe
would be like rum or port barrel finished, I think. Yeah, I think we
Angel's
did.
Envy is port.
Yeah, it's port. Yeah,
port.
So
Okay.
we've
But
done
it's
a
not
couple.
rye. Is it a rye?
I don't
bourbon.
think so. Yeah, it's
They
bourbon.
have a rye too. They have a rye.
They do,
also.
but it's
we didn't do
They
it.
do have it now, but you guys, well, not with our stuff.
No.
Maybe you guys did it on your own. Yeah.
I don't think so. No, I don't think I've had any finished rye. I'll have to look through
Okay.
the rest of it
everything.
being kind of its own category. I'm not sure where to put it relative to others, but like on its own, it's pretty good. I don't have anything negative to say about it, really. There's like on the finish, there's a little bit of bitterness, which is maybe a little bit negative sometimes, but most of the flavors are very good. Love the cinnamon, think it pairs well with the spice, so I would give it a 7, I think.
Oh, nice. Wow. Thank you.
I was going to say, I actually like it quite a bit too. I think it's very interesting. I feel like it's deep. It's kind of coating my tongue, like it hangs out for a while, gives me a little hug without being like harsh. I don't feel like I've got heartburn coming up later. It is like different. It's a different spin on a rye because I feel like a lot of times when you get these finished things, they are trying to make them somehow sweeter or something. I don't know. Yeah. And I like this. This one has a lot of depth. It almost feels like something like, I don't really do cigars, but like once a year we used to do like family stuff. And it would be that kind of thing. Like it's a nice like family thing. Let's have some pours of this and like have it. So I actually kind of feel the same. It's a 7 for me as well.
That's fantastic. Speaking about cigars, and I'm happy you picked up on it. So going back to Starlight, being that it was them that introduced us to the world really and made it famous. Guess what they call that first batch and every other batch of Amburana finished barrel? It was a cigar batch.
The cigar batch.
Mm.
Cigar batch.
Yes.
I've
It's a
seen
cigar
people have
batch.
cigar batches. I didn't really know what that meant.
Well, good question, because it could mean many different things. In the traditional sense of the word, and it wasn't Starlight that essentially introduced the cigar batching naming convention. It was
Yep.
actually another brand called Joseph Magnus.
Ah, yes.
And Joseph Magnus had they're famous for their cigar. What was it, Badge? I think it's called Badge. Cigar Badge, yeah. The reason they call it that, I think it's just a marketing ploy, to be honest with you. But it has 3 different finishes of that bourbon. It's, for the most part, it's Madeira, sherry, and Sauternes. Sometimes people use cognac instead of Sauternes. Like it's a combination of those 3 or 4 spirits, and then everybody does it different. So like historically, that's what people would associate with a cigar. And the story goes is that people call it cigar because it's so robust it could stand up to a cigar.
Yeah.
It could be like a very nice pairing with a cigar.
That makes
talking
sense.
about the robustness, this is super robust to me. I mean, and that's why
It is.
Yeah.
it's a natural pairing to a cigar. And what drew us to this is the fact that I could still totally taste the rye in this, like that spiciness that you alluded to, even that bitterness that you alluded to. That's specific to a rye. A rye is supposed to be spicy, right? That's what it is. And you definitely taste cinnamon in this, but it's not overpowering the rye.
Yeah.
Like you can totally say that you're still drinking the rye, and that's what you want in a balanced, finished whiskey. So the fact that it was a rye and you don't see rye finishes all that much, and especially not in an Amburana, was a draw to us. And but when we select stuff, honestly, like we're not really swayed by what's on a label. As a matter of fact, we taste everything blind. Like I don't want to know what I'm tasting.
Yeah.
Tell me after I make a selection, which results in the best tasting whiskey that we can pick on that particular date, right? From the options
Yeah.
that we have.
Yeah.
If we're doing it at the distillery, like the options are endless, and so you have to draw a line somewhere. If you do it virtually, then they'll send you a kit of 4 to 5 samples, and so you got to pick from that. And a lot of times we actually said we don't like anything, and so just send it
Yeah.
back and don't make a switch, right?
Yeah. Thanks, but no
Yeah.
thanks today.
Yeah, exactly.
I am
So-
gonna press you on giving it a rating, even though it's your own.
Mine, well, on its own, because like I'm jaded in that like we're up to pick number 91. we're
Right.
launching our 91st barrel this Friday. So it's like having 90 kids. Like which
Yeah.
one do you like best, right? So they're all different. We pick them for different reasons, but on its own and in relationship to how nicely balanced it is, I'll say 6.5.
I'd say that's
6.5.
solid. There's
I've
nothing wrong
had
with that.
ryes that a little better, honestly.
Yeah.
I've had ryes that haven't been finished in anything that are better. And honestly, if you are a whiskey drinker and if you start noticing that you start gravitating towards rye more than bourbons, that means the palate is evolving.
Oh.
Because look at it as a spectrum, right? So like if this is a spectrum, bourbon has a wider spectrum, meaning if it's great, it's really great. But if it's bad, it's really bad to the point
Yeah.
that it's like it's undrinkable.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's a rye. That's right. Rye has a wider spectrum. Bourbon is a narrow spectrum where it's not that bad if it's bad, but it's not that great if it's great either. Like there are some great bourbons. Don't get me wrong. Obviously.
Yeah.
But those are
your
few and far-
catch-all is pretty wide.
Right.
You can get away with like a $25 bourbon and be like, this is probably going to be okay most of the time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly. Rye just has a much wider range, so there is a much more going on in the world of ryes, and so even in our tastings, like we have tastings once a month with different brands. As a matter of fact, right after this, we have a tasting with a brand called Balcones.
Oh, yeah.
That are making
In
single malt.
Austin. Yeah.
Yeah,
We've had it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and we talk about as a group on these calls with these brands, I just noticed that people gravitate towards rye expressions more because it's just that much different. It offers more to a person that has had pretty much everything. Right?
Yeah. I resent
Yeah.
that you said that, though, because it's going to make Robbie feel like he's a greater expert than he is, because he's always liked the ryes. Which, by the way,
Well, there you
I'm gonna do a little of this just to like see if
Yeah.
it changes things too. A couple of drops of distilled water to open it up. See, that was one of the things I learned a long time ago at the Jack Rose. They were like, you get a dram here, and then they give you this, and they're like, have the first bit as is. And then add a couple of drops and try something else all together. And like that is a pretty cool thing.
On that note, do you know why people add a big big cube of ice in their drink? Why is it cube of ice? Why is it not crushed ice?
Because they're not Robbie and idiots.
Because they didn't have crushed ice available.
Let's say you did have it available. Would you put crushed ice?
I used to use crushed ice, and I got in big trouble for it.
This is a perfect hot take, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of my questions was, is ice evil for tasting real whiskey?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, how you doing it is right.
Yeah.
Because you are now giving your whiskey a second life. When you add a few drops of water into it, what ends up happening is it opens up the whiskey.
It really does.
It smooths out the whiskey. If it's too hot for you, it smooths out the whiskey. And by the way, that's another reason why people that know whiskey prefer cask strength, barrel strength expressions. Why? Because if it's too hot, they can always add water to it and make it to their own liking.
Exactly.
But if it comes in at 90% proof, which is 45 ABV, and it's not strong enough, well, there's nothing you can do about it.
No,
That's it.
that's it.
That's the strongest it'll ever be. So that's another reason for it, and that's why the cask strength stuff is always going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
But anyway, with regards to the ice question, there's actually science behind it. So when you add a cube of ice, big block cube of ice, it melts slower.
Yep.
So it dilutes your whiskey slower. It still chills your whiskey, but it dilutes it slower, allowing you more time to enjoy full flavors of that whiskey before it gets diluted. If you add crushed ice to it, it melts faster, turning your whiskey into
A slushy.
Yeah.
Slushy.
What if you just drink really fast, though? It's fine.
that's fine.
I suppose.
Use a
that's
straw.
what-
Use a straw.
I don't know. Use a straw and get there quickly. Yeah. When we
Yeah.
first started this show 2.5 years ago, that's how Robbie would drink rye, but he would drink it on crushed ice and basically just have it that way. He just poured it. I'd be like, "What are you doing? You're not even." I don't know. It all tastes like water, like whiskey slushy to you.
I mean, if you're
And-
doing them all the same way, though, then it's like a level playing field.
That's true. That's actually true. So when we do our selections, we would do several takes, right? So like the first time through it, we would just do cask strength without anything added. But the point is, you always have to do it the same. So like if you're tasting 5 samples, they all have to be unchilled, unfiltered, without any ice. Then the next round, they all should have ice, right? So like you have to keep the level
you should.
consistent at all times. Here's another interesting factoid for you. When you're nosing them, when you're smelling the whiskey, right? How do you normally do it? Show me.
I do this.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I wanna
Chuck,
see that
Chuck
mouth
does it the
open.
right way. I don't do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
learned a long time ago from like when I started getting into nicer wines with my wife. I mean, I've been drinking whiskey a pretty long time, but not always in the nicest ways. Like, growing up in Kentucky, well, first of all, you're 8 years old. They hand you your first whiskey. No, I'm just kidding. Doesn't quite go that way. But
why so old?
yeah, exactly. No, but in college, you get a handle of Jim Beam and some Coke and whatever. And you kind of like do that. Whiskey's the choice, but you're kind of doing it that way. And gosh, even like times in the early 2000s when I would, I'd be like $50. I don't know. I can get some pretty good stuff for $20, but this comes over time. So I actually do credit learning how to drink wine with learning more about how to drink whiskey and like actually appreciate the nuance of it. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you open up your mouth because it helps you actually pick up the actual notes of the liquid and not just ethanol.
Yeah.
And to that point, the geeks, I don't do it, but the geeks, they would actually close one nostril because one of your nostrils always will pick up ethanol more than the other. And so you need to close the one that picks up more ethanol.
Oh.
So if you try doing that, you'll see that you start picking up different things from your glass.
Okay. Well, there's just
And
pro
I
tip.
also see people like sticking their nose right into the glass. That's wrong either.
No.
It has to be almost on your mouth level, right?
Yeah.
So you have to let the whiskey come to you, not the other way around. So that's certain things that you can say.
Did you see Robbie's Bougie Glencairn where it's like it's dual layered so
Oh,
that
nice.
like
It's,
he can
what is
hold
it?
it?
There's-
What are they called?
Norland, right?
Norland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Norland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I broke all of mine. They're so
See-
I don't know.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
tap
They
it too
break
hard
easily,
on
right?
anything,
Yeah.
If
they're
you
very
breathe
thin.
on it
Yeah.
too hard, it's I had like a set and then I broke one and then I just had one for a while, but I was like, I can't move this around too much. And then they had some sort of like replacement sale. And I was like, finally, and get us
Because they know it breaks.
they know it breaks.
I've
Well, you
gotten
don't want to
set for
have
my-
the. You want your customers to come back and buy stuff again, right? Can't be too.
That's a brilliant business model if you can sustain
Yeah.
it. That's true.
Yeah, for sure.
I've gotten a set for Christmas, like a couple of years back, and they didn't last long. But I did do like a head-to-head test. I poured some stuff into it, and I poured some stuff into one of these things.
Yeah.
I prefer these. Tried and true. I pick up more stuff from them. The glass that you're holding looks nicer, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I'm able to pick up more stuff in a traditional Glencairn.
This is out of my aged and or travel set. So
This is
I
nice
really,
too.
yeah, they're like really heavy and kind of nice. And I don't know. I take my travel kit with me a bunch. It's just kind of useful.
We recently partnered with them actually.
I saw that in a recent tasting kit with the Four Roses one. I was like, want, can't right now.
Well, we saw
but
one without
want.
the whiskey too, which is a lot more approachable.
Yeah, no, I want the whiskey. That's part of it.
Well, do you know the story behind why they're so expensive? So, like for people that are listening and not really understanding what the hell we're talking about,
Yep.
we have a tasting kit that we sell on our website, primebarrel.com, it's a tasting kit that includes 4 different expressions. So it includes twin barrels of 16-year-old Four Roses, OESD yeast formula for the Four Roses geeks still know. And then it has a new riff, the one and only in existence, 9-year-old single barrel bourbon. New riff, for the people that don't know, again, has opened up their doors about 10 years ago. When they opened up their doors, they laid down a few barrels, obviously, and they put them in the vault. And 2 years ago, Eastern Kentucky got hit with tornadoes and floods, and it was big news. People lost their homes, and in certain cases, livelihoods, and in certain cases, lives. And bourbon community has always been very generous, always had a big heart, and charity auctions is nothing new to a bourbon community. And so there was one organized to support the victims of those unfortunate events. And lots of distilleries took place in it, as well as just local individuals, and just any bourbon aficionado could offer up a bottle from their collection for sale, for an auction. All proceeds went to, obviously, to support the people in need. But as a part of that auction, there were a few interesting events, experiences, as people would call them. And a couple of them were come to Four Roses, have Brent Elliott, who is their head master distiller, lead you on a VIP tour, and then help you pick a barrel with him. And that was too good to pass up. And so we ended up winning an auction. Funny story there too. As chance would have it, I was going to Kentucky as the auction was ending. And I remember as soon as my plane hit the tarmac in Louisville, I was checking on my phone because that's when the auction was ending. And I was one of the last 2 people bidding for it. And we drove up the price in the last probably minute and a half by tens of thousands of dollars between me and whoever else it was. I actually ended up losing the auction because it's gotten to a point where I was like, as much as I want to do this, I just can't swing it, right?
Right.
And so I'm disappointed. I'm getting my luggage in the airport, and I get a phone call from a Louisville number, unrecognized number. I have no idea who this is. I pick up, and it's a person that runs those charity auctions. She's like, "Hey, we noticed you were a finalist for the experience. Unfortunately, didn't win, but we reached out to Four Roses, and they offered to match your highest bidding price so that you get an opportunity to do it as well." I'm like, holy crap.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we agreed to it, and that's how that happened. And so when we came to Four Roses, those people are unbelievable in terms of their hospitality. Obviously, it's a very historic grounds. It's a very famed brand for a good reason, because they output some of the most fantastic bourbon in every price. At every price point, you can get a $35 Four Roses, small batch selection in your local store, Bevmo, whatever. Total Wine.
It's good.
And for the money, it's good. You can't do no better. They also have their expensive expressions that are just fantastic as well, but you're going to pay.
Yep.
When it comes to single barrel Four Roses, those things are like super hard to get and probably not a topic of the conversation for today, but suffice it to say, retailers need to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to even have an opportunity to select barrels.
Yeah.
And so what happens is it also like depends on a state where your business is operating. And in New York, it's double. It's almost impossible to get it, because what happens is distributors get the access to those barrels, and then they do the selection themselves, and then they distribute the proceeds from that barrel, the yield from that barrel, to different stores and different accounts. So you might, if you're lucky, you might be able to get like 6 bottles off a certain selection that it wasn't even you that made it, right? So it's not as special. And so for us being from New York and not having any other opportunity to do a single barrel, let alone 16-year-old single barrel, was just too much to pass up. So we agreed to it, and we came there, and Brent was just outstanding. Like, for a person of his stature, so somebody who knows whiskey inside and out, somebody who's obviously, holds a high position in a distillery. He was very down to earth. He was one of us, and it was amazing. And they let us pick not 1 but 2 barrels, because when they are that old, the yield from them is lower, right? Because wood eats into your whiskey.
There's the angel share is
angel
what they say.
share, right? Yes. Exactly. The barrel that we selected had like super low yield, and so they let us select a second one, which is what they call a sister barrel. What that means is it was sitting right next to it in the rick house, and it came off the same still, so the flavor profile is very similar. So that's what ended up happening. But the price, do you want to know the ending price of that auction?
Sure, why not? You want to share it? I mean, I feel like it's got to be 6 figures.
It is 6 figures.
Okay.
It was $150,000.
Yeah, oh my gosh. So,
and now do the math. Let's do the math. Both of these barrels yielded less than 150 bottles.
Right.
And so that's why the bottle is so expensive. It's a simple. And then people that don't know, there are a lot of those. Always will find something to complain about. Like, oh, look at you're price gouging. Like, I'm not price gouging.
When you
look at the
math.
In a position, right? Well, I don't even want to explain this honestly, but when you are in a position to donate $150,000 to a charity,
sure,
you can do whatever you want with that, right? And so, I don't come to your place of work, and I don't spit out nonsense.
You could go with Robbie to the Amazon building and tell him that he's doing his ember wrong, and you might be right. There's a 50% chance that you're right. I'm gonna add a little more of this, but I wanna wait. We got to swing back around to hot takes first of all, because there has to be some technical talk here, and
let's do it.
we will do some of that. But so Robbie really wants to ask you this question.
Of course.
Well, I choked myself on some whiskey there, so I'm trying to recover, but. I want to know how NFTs are doing for you. Do you think NFTs were a mistake in general, or are they going well?
That is a loaded question, Robbie.
It is a loaded question because you have incentive to one degree, but you can say the vehicle isn't working or whatever.
All right, so let me answer that question this way. Let me take you back a few years again, because it'll help me and you understand the framework within which this project was born and exists. So 3 years ago, again, pandemic, like everything that happened, Prime Barrel specific, seems to be, seems to have its origins.
The Prime-demic, you could call it the Prime-demic.
I'm gonna call my next barrel that Prime-demic.
Done. Sweet. Send me a sample. Thanks.
We'll do it. Back then, NFTs were all the rage. The crypto was all the rage. I think for all the wrong reasons, honestly, because people were speculating, people weren't really investing in it for the right reasons. They were investing in it as a way of making a quick buck, basically flipping NFTs, right? And a lot of those NFT projects were revolving around some sort of exclusivity, some sort of an art project, right? So like your NFT itself became a product. Yeah. The most infamous or famous, depending on your vantage point, NFT project was Bored Ape Yacht Club, right?
Yep.
And those things were selling for 6 figures, high 6 figures, sometimes 7 figures, right? And I was always the one that's saying, what the hell are people paying for? What does this fucking thing do? Like, I don't understand this, right? Like, why would people pay it? Then through like baptized by fire, once we started like going down that rabbit hole, you're starting to like put the puzzle together. And really, to me, it came down to exclusivity and being a part of some sort of like, I don't want to call it a cult community, but there's some sort of secret society, right? Secret societies has existed for ages, right? Masons, like going back to Masons, right? So it was a lot of that, and it was like an ability to rub shoulders with celebrities and people with like high net worth and all that kind of stuff.
So it's like Scientology is what you're saying. No, that's an LA joke. That's an LA joke. You get that? Yeah. Anyway,
that's what 99% of NFT projects were then. We looked at it in a completely different way. We wanted to capitalize on popularity on NFT, no question.
sure.
But it wasn't the biggest thing. The biggest thing for us was I always understood that I am in the business of selling whiskey and promoting whiskey. I am not in a business of facilitating or administering memberships. I'm not AAA.
Right.
To do that properly, it needed to be scaled. It needed to be done so that it allowed me freedom to do what I do best, which is again select whiskeys and market them to people and have the community around it, but not being like buried in lines of code and trying to reinvent the wheel, really, right? Because like you think about memberships, which is what we are, like it's a membership-based club. Membership models existed forever, and now you have different membership types, right? You have Patreon club subscribers, you have just a typical membership structure where people pay you like Netflix, right? Like that kind of thing. Like people pay you on certain cadence every month. So long story short, I wanted a framework and structure that allowed very little involvement from my end, and that the membership administration, in terms of recognizing who the person is, allowing them certain access based on their membership tiers, all of that, I wanted all of that automated. And so the blockchain allowed for a lot of it. I'll give you a perfect example. People say, well, you can do the same thing with passwords. Yes, you can. It's not as secure. I'll give you a perfect example. We were sharing a Barrell with another club, and we kind of agreed behind the scenes with the people that were running that club that it's going to go on sale at a certain time. We knew it was a pretty sought after Barrell, so it would sell fast, right? So we wanted to make sure everyone had at least an equal chance of grabbing a bottle.
Yep.
And both our clubs had people that were supporting the clubs for quite some time. And we always gave those people, this is prior to us launching, we always gave those people dibs on any product drops. So these people would get like notifications first. The product landing page would be password protected. We would only share the password with that group.
Yep.
When we did it for our own club, it always worked great. People didn't share those passwords. They understood why they were getting first dibs. They felt special, right, in return, because now you incentivizing their loyalty. And in a very simple terms, there was a loyalty card, right? When you do it with people that you don't know, there are always the bad actors. And so what happened in that particular time, people shared the password. As simple as that. Yeah. And so people flocked to it. Whole thing was gone in under a minute. Like I've never seen anything like that. It was an Old Forester barrel strength barrel that sold out in 90 seconds. So not under 2 minutes, 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And when I started, as a business, I'm not complaining. Great, we sold everything out. But as someone who tries to cultivate a community around a shared passion, oh my God, there was such a blowback. Like, oh, you flexed on this limited bottles and this and that and the other, and like it's pointless to explain to people that it wasn't us. It was just the technology basically failed us, right? So it wasn't set up properly to handle this use case.
Yep.
Fast forward to blockchain and NFTs, that doesn't happen. If you don't have an NFT in your wallet, you're not going to get access. Simple as that, right? So that solved that particular problem. And it's just one example. I can give you more examples.
No, I think that's a very good example, and I want to actually add on to it a little bit. It harkens back specifically to the ideal use case that I don't know if you know who Kevin Rose is. He did like Dignation, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he's big in NFTs as well. Yep. And he was a very big advocate, especially around the membership model. And his easy example was because he's in all these different wine clubs, and him and his wife like this wine, whatever. But their wine club membership is an email in a system, and it's sort of like you wait on a wait list, and then you get in at some point, and now you're, aligned in a database. And if you change your mind at any point, you go away, and then someone else comes into it, and you really have kind of nothing for that commodity to away, and it commoditizes the membership. So like there's the technological simplification through blockchain that allows you like access through verification, but there's also like, if I'm a Prime Barrel member and I want to resell my membership, that's a commodity that I can now resell, and a part of it goes back to you, and then that can just kind of keep going in perpetuity.
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example of what you just said. So just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I had someone reach out to me and say, hey, I am really interested in this upcoming Found North limited release. How can I get my hands on it? And prior to the release, we advertised the fact that, hey, we only have so many bottles that got allocated to us as a retailer because of our support of the brand. Those bottles will be first and only available to our paid members. Yep. I think as a business, you have the entire right to say that, right? Because that you are incentivizing people's loyalty. Why should I give this bottle to someone that's cherry picking and not someone who's been with me every step of the way, right? So I think that's an easy thing to grasp. And so this guy sends me an email and says, hey, I want it. And he goes, I consider your membership, but because the price of the membership is pegged to Ethereum, and crypto has been on a run list recently, it's just way beyond where it started out to be. It's actually, I think it's increased like 100% in price. It doubled in price.
Right.
And I go, look, if you sign up for the membership, I'll include this bottle for you. And he signed up.
Wow.
And then after he signed up, he goes, one of the reasons I did that, not just the bottle, I'm a terminal cancer patient. And I want to leave something behind to my daughter. One of the things I want to leave to her is this membership because we share a love for bourbon. We share a love. And this goes back to my original point where it's a relationship building. It's something very profound that can happen to you. And so he can always just transfer his membership to his daughter, right? I hope it doesn't happen for years to come, right? But that's always a choice, not to mention people can always sell it, right? And the selling price is going to depend on how valuable and desirable the membership is. And that goes right back to the community, because as a community, you're all incentivized to drive up the price of the club because it makes your individual investment in it that much more valuable. So and interestingly, that brings up a bigger point. What I quickly realized, and Robbie, this is going back to your question, whether or not I think it was a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake. Would I do it again? I would probably do a few things differently. What I would do, I would spend a lot more time educating people onto what NFTs are and aren't. Yeah. We ran into I don't want to call it a problem, but an obstacle where people didn't want to learn. They're like, oh, crypto? No, that's a scam. They didn't know what crypto is. They didn't just when you dug just a little deeper, when you asked them like two probing questions, even one probing question, like, why do you think it's a scam? Oh, it pollutes the environment. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So like everybody came to it with the preconceived notions, and it took us, that's why we created a Discord community, which turned out to be a lifesaver because it allowed people to kind of channel into this virtual community.
And it doesn't just leave it to you. There's a community of educators. Right. I'm in that community, so I see the chatter that goes on there. Like, yeah, it's really nice. I think it's funny. And also, if you think about it this way, especially in like the modern whiskey landscape, if you're somebody that is trying to get rare allocations in the world right now, you're creating a relationship and a community in some way regardless, if you're getting it, right?
Correct.
You're either like finding your people in Facebook groups or on Reddit, or you're going to your local
neighborhood liquor store.
You're going to your neighborhood liquor store, and you're probably buying a lot of shit you didn't want so that you can start
just like the stores do. Yeah. Exactly.
Like they get you to like, okay, well, I buy all my wine here and I get some other stuff, and now I made friends with the guy who does the stocking and the picks and all that kind of. That's what I did in DC. I made friends with my locals, and that's how I got hookups. And then I worked that into my Facebook groups and all that. Like, there's work to be done, regardless.
Exactly.
So
and look, and again, like going back to the overall question about NFT being a right vehicle for something like this, I think at the end we will be vindicated. Whereas with more education, with more adoption, people will come back to it and understand that this is not a scam. There is actual tangible business behind it. There's a tangible goods and services that are being provided to it. NFT itself is not a product. I am not selling you digital art. I could care. Well, I care about the art. Oh, by the way, but this is our NFT art, a part of it, and I'll discuss this in a second. But I wanted the art to be on point, but that's not the value prop of the club. The value prop of the club is very simple. If you enjoy access to limited stuff, right? To Chuck's point, we have twice a year, we have this, what we call a randomizer. And it's only named right now because everybody who's a premium member gets a shot at least one allocated bottle. And again, for the people that don't know, allocations there are sought after bottles in the whiskey world that are either limited supply or limited supply. We'll just call them that, right? Quality, it can be argued. So not everybody have access to those bottles, and when you do, a lot of times those bottles are priced up several times over. So we allow our premium members to buy them at MSRP twice a year. We have a fantasy football draft, so we put everyone's names
proper
in the hat.
football or that like egg ball game bullshit?
Proper football fantasy draft, essentially. Like it's a variation, a spin on it. So what we do is we put
you know what I
everybody-
mean? You know I mean soccer, European football, proper football. Okay.
No.
I make jokes about
rugby,
that
the rugby stuff. Yeah.
There you go.
Although, like I played both. I grew up playing soccer. So we put everyone's name into the hat. We allow people to see a list of everything that we will have available to them, and they basically rank every expression in the order they want to buy them, right? And so the first person to be drafting has like essentially the entire selection at their disposal, and we go right down the list, and we do it twice a year. And so people gravitate towards that builds value, and that's how they are able to justify the price point of the membership, right? It's not cheap.
No.
So that's one. Secondly, the relationships again, right? So we do these selections 90% of the time. We do them in person, which means we travel to distilleries. Those are experiences. What I've learned through doing this, people are more likely to pay you for experiences than they are for actual goods, be that bottles or anything else, because it gives you a story to tell. It gives you a story to tell to your buddies, to your family, to your kids, right?
Yeah.
And then again, you're bonding over a shared passion, and there's nothing more. There's nothing better than that, I think.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. So our premium members get a chance to come with us, and we take, depending on where we're going, anywhere from like 6 to 8 people at a time. So,
and sometimes you include quasi-famous podcasters. Like, you don't know who you're going to meet there. Could be anyone. For sure. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to know when are you going to integrate AI into the club and the experience? Because coming from blockchain, your next natural jump has got to be AI.
We kind of have already in certain use cases.
Yeah.
So I no longer have a marketing person. I no longer have a copyright person. I no longer have even a developer. Well, we do have developers, but there's less of them now.
Right.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
You'll find out.
Right.
From the fire hose, they call that. Yeah.
That's right. I know the tasks that used to take me longer take now shorter. I think it's all about there are pitfalls, yes. Like you can't really take everything that the AI is suggesting for at face value. You should still have your wits about you and kind of like either double check or apply it in the right manner. I think people that actually know how to use prompts for AI and know how to best integrate it to their use cases, because it's not end all be all. It's not going to solve all of your problems,
right?
Magically. You need to understand how to apply it. It's a business tool like anything else. So we use it for copywriting, we use it for marketing, we use it for advertising, we use it for even drawing, like randomizing things. Like we didn't do it today, but like in the past, I would let's say I have 10 bottles of rare character and people want it, and I have 30 people that want it. I would put all 30 people into an AI and I say, hey, randomly select 10 people. Boom.
Yeah.
It selects 10 people for me right there. There are other tools that do that, of course.
Sure,
But
but
then also, we do it twice a year, remember? And so what we do the second time around, so we do it in July. We call it Christmas in July event. And then we do it for actual Christmas. So the Christmas event, the actual Christmas event is always weighted, meaning if you were drafting at the top of the draft the first time around, your weighted average for the next draft would be lower. And again, it's very randomized. So like AI, it's very easy to do that in AI. So we do use it to some degree already. Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people who are tuned into technology use it to some degree. Like I use it multiple times per week for various things, where just basically it makes Google faster. Like something I might have Googled, I put it into there, and then it's just faster.
Yeah. Google's doing it for you, though, now. If you search stuff, it just, like, summarizes it at the top. Like, this is probably what you wanted.
Oh,
Like-
yeah. I've seen some
So
of that
does Bing,
too.
right? So does Bing.
Yeah.
Because they put a lot of money.
What's Bing? What's Bing?
That's when
Right.
you take your whiskey bottle and you hit it with something metal. It goes bing.
Yeah, you go Bing. Oh, yeah, that is kind of like a Bing. Yes, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, so we're a bit over time here. One question I do want to ask, and I don't know if you can answer this being a seller of whiskey and don't want to alienate any brands. Is there a worst whiskey you've ever had? Like,
Yes.
okay.
Fireball.
Oh, yeah. I think we all can agree on that
But
is for
I just
people
had an
who
idea.
hate themselves and alcohol,
In
right?
talking to you guys, I just had an idea. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Okay.
If you ever had
You're
Fireball,
very
you know,
humble.
well, I'll give you the credit. If you know what Fireball is, and if you ever had a misfortune of trying one, it's a cinnamon bomb, right? That's like a cinnamon juice, essentially. It's not even a whiskey.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Well, guess what this is? This is also cinnamon. So I'm going to start calling Fireball an Amburana finish and see how that goes.
Okay. Yeah. Just relabel it. See what happens there. Charge a premium. If you're not in our membership, this is what you get. This Amburana finish.
On a serious note, and I don't want to, I'll answer that question on a serious note too. We actually had this discussion in Discord recently about not necessarily the worst whiskey, but stuff that's just undrinkable to that specific person and how people do the drain pours, right? I don't necessarily believe that people actually do that. I think it's all done for show for the most part. We actually had a war veteran come up and chime in Discord and say, hey, don't ever do that. If you don't like it so much, send it to me. I'll drink it. I don't have money to pay for any whiskey. I'm here because I like it. I'm here because I enjoy the community, but I haven't bought a thing because I just can't afford it. Well, guess what happened?
People
That
send
guy, oh my God, he got like 50 packages sent his way. And people bombarded me saying, hey, not because they were bad whiskey. People were actually giving them good whiskey.
Yeah.
Because he was a war veteran and, we wanted to pay respects. And anyway. So there's a perspective, right? So the worst whiskey, it's all in the eye of the beholder.
It's all subjective. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
the first time I ever toured Buffalo Trace a long time ago, and there was our tour guide, retired person. You know how it is in Kentucky. It's oftentimes a retired person who just likes whiskey and they're hanging out and whatever else. And they're like, a bunch of you probably here for Pappy Van Winkle. I think it was like 2007 or something. A bunch of you are here for Pappy Van Winkle and all that. And that's fine if that's what you like. But I always say to everyone, the best whiskey is the one you like. And if it is a $20 bottle of Weller, then good for you. And if it's Pappy Van Winkle, then all
You
right.
can tell that was a long time ago.
Yeah, because even the Weller doesn't cost that anymore. I know, 107 Weller Antique used to be my jam, and I could pick it up for $25 on the regular. Yeah, that changed.
Yeah, good luck with that. No.
No. There's no luck involved.
People
It's
used
not
to buy
happening.
that one and the Weller Reserve, which is a green label, mix them together and call it Pappy. Poor Man Pappy.
Poor Man Pappy. Yeah, yeah. There was a blend
It's the
out
same
there.
whiskey. I mean,
It's the same mash bill. It's just
Long,
yeah,
same mash bill.
same mash bill. So, but like you said, that's not the Stitzer Weller juice. That's the how do we fill this void because this is doing well. Thanks, Anthony Bourdain. He killed himself over it.
If you want to mess with people, especially people that fancy themselves whiskey snobs, do a blind tasting with them and pour a poor Pappy 10, not Pappy, old Rip Van Winkle 10 years old.
Yeah.
To me, it's undrinkable. I can't drink that stuff.
Nah,
It's just
I don't like it
straight up
either. And
gasoline.
I don't like it either. Lot B is not bad, actually. I like a Lot B.
Lot B I like.
I like the 15. I actually don't like the 23. It's like too.
I'll tell you one thing. I know we're running over, but I'll tell you one thing. So when it comes to oak flavor in the whiskey, which is like dry, tannic, note that people pick up and don't really like. Some people do like it, but lots of people don't.
Yeah.
Bourbon and Scotch are completely two different animals when it comes to how long a whiskey's being aged. The longer the bourbon gets aged, because remember, it's a new wood, right?
Yep.
So all the intense flavors stay with whiskey longer. And so the longer it goes, the more oakier it's going to get. I mean, so drinking like 25-year-old bourbon, I don't care what it is. It's like hugging a tree. Literally.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. I think the sweet spot for bourbon would be anywhere from 8 to 15, 16 years. And that's pushing, right? 8 to 12 is really my sweet spot.
Yeah.
But
same. I agree with you.
Scotch, on the other hand, because it's, for the most part, it's aged in secondary casks, so ex-bourbon casks most of the time, right? So it's not new wood. It's been used. A lot of times it's been used for years. So the effect on the wood, on the spirit is much more gentle. The longer it stays in the barrel, the more developed it becomes because it takes longer, right? So that's why you see those like aged scotches demand the price that they do because they, and by the way, those distilleries pay tax on every year they don't sell it, right? They pay tax. So that accrues, and that's why those aged scotches are that much more expensive.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to have you on the show is that we have lots of listeners that like whiskey, they like the tech aspect, but they're always like saying to us like, oh, you guys are the experts. We really don't know that much. And we don't know that much, to be honest. Like, sure,
I don't know that much.
We're all learning what we're learning, but like we appreciate you coming on and like helping to educate our listeners like to the next level. If you're really into whiskey and you want to know a little bit more of what you're having, like I think you've been really helpful there.
I appreciate that. I always enjoy coming on people's podcasts and talking to folks that enjoy whiskey with me. I try to keep it as layman as possible. I learn a lot from my members. And Chuck, if you're in Discord, you can attest to that. Like there are people that really know their stuff in there.
Oh yeah,
really know their stuff in there. And you learn through association, you learn through talking to them. And so if people are interested and really interested in about becoming a part of the whiskey community without having to pay a dime for it, join our Discord. It's free. We welcome everybody.
Yeah. So where can people find links to, join Discord, get a membership, do all the things?
I can send you a link. It's pretty simple. It's vip.primebarrel.com /Discord, capital D. So vip.primebarrel.com /Discord. And that gets you right into our Discord.
Okay. Capital D, like kind of what I do to Robbie with my tea bag. God.
I knew that was coming.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Anything else that you want to plug or mention before we end here?
No. I think I've plugged 100%. I appreciate you guys' time and giving me an opportunity to actually talk about the club. But again, like I said in the beginning, it's all about relationships. If you guys want to meet others over the shared passion, and if whiskey is your passion, then our Discord is a place for you.
For sure.
And I'm happy to have both of you in there. I know Chuck is in there. I'm not sure if Robbie's in there, but yeah.
I'm not. I will be though. I just haven't joined yet. I should.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave us some ratings and reviews. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time.
Boom, 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 boom.